Looks like we're on the record. All right, we are on the record in case number 2024-00346, electronic application of Delta Natural Gas Company for an adjustment of gas rates. My name is Angie Hatton. I'm Chair of the Kentucky Public Service Commission, and joining me today is Commissioner Mary Pat Regan. And for those in the hearing room, please set your cellular phones to silent mode or turn them off. For those witnesses who will testify and counsel who will participate in the hearing by video conferencing, to assist with audio clarity and avoid feedback issues for the video conference hearing, please mute your microphone, turn off your video if you're not speaking. If you use a phone for the audio and a computer for the video, turn off the computer audio. I feel like each of these has probably been an issue. We've had to add one more step every time, but if you're in a room with several people on their own computers, turn off the computer audio for all but one computer. If another participant is in a nearby office, close the door between the offices. And please alert the commission if you're experiencing any technology failure that prevents your participation at any time in the proceedings. Attorneys should contact staff in the previously provided contact information. The hearing today is for the purpose of taking evidence in this matter. At this time, we'll do entry of appearance of counsel for the applicant.
Good morning, Monica Braun from Stahl, Keenan, Ogden on behalf of Delta Natural Gas Company. I have with me my colleague Mary Ellen Wimberly, also our paralegal Molly Loy, who will be assisting if a witness needs to find a response, and also have with us this morning Megan Moore. Megan is a senior attorney with P&G Companies.
Okay. And for the Attorney General's office.
Good morning, Your Honor. For the Attorney General, Lawrence Cook and Tolan Lacey.
Good morning. And for Commission staff.
Mariah Tessie and Noah Abner's here today.
Good morning. I've been advised that public notice has been given and has been filed on the record. Is that correct?
Yes.
And there are a few outstanding motions.
Yes, would you like me to address those?
Sure.
There are two outstanding motions. There's a motion for leave to file stipulation and testimony that was filed on April 14th, and a motion to deviate from the publication requirements that was filed on April 15th. Two of the newspapers did not publish the hearing notice as requested.
Okay. So I don't know that you had to file the motion for leave. I appreciate that you did.
Okay.
It's been filed, so I think maybe that one's moot at this point. And then there's some outstanding motions for confidential treatment. We'll
Yes.
get those out with the order. The motion for deviation. Find my notes on that. Does council have a position on the motion for
Chair
deviation?
Hatton, I believe I had presented that motion to the commission and you all had approved the guidance which recommended granting the motion.
Yeah, that's my recollection too. Does the
Yeah.
Attorney General have a position on that?
No, we have no objection.
Right. And I have been advised that there is no one waiting online to give public comment. Is there anyone in the room that came today with the purpose of giving public comment? I don't see anyone. I'll remind anyone watching that public comment may always be given in writing. If you want to do so just any time before we render a decision in this matter, you can email. And let's get that email address. It's you can find all the information on our website at psc.ky.gov. And you can send an email to psc.comment@ky.gov. And please let the record show that the instructions and link to provide public comment have been posted on our website for at least one day. Okay, and now before we start the presentation of evidence portion of our program, we will, I have some questions that I need to ask in the event of a settlement. So whoever wishes to swear for the applicant and for the Attorney General, please raise your right hand. Okay. You might need a microphone, Mr. Brown, if you want to.
Yeah.
Just to make sure it's all clear in the record. Okay. Were you aware of and did you have an opportunity to participate in all of the negotiations that resulted in the settlement agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you voluntarily sign the agreement, and do you fully support each and every provision contained therein?
Yes.
Are there any provisions in the settlement agreement that you do not understand, object to, or take issue with?
No.
Was any consideration of any kind offered, or were any promises made other than what is expressly set forth in the settlement agreement to induce you to negotiate and sign the settlement agreement?
No.
Are you aware of any reason why the commission should not adopt and approve the settlement agreement in its entirety?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Brown. You can have a seat again until they call you, which I imagine is gonna be in just a second. Not my call, but
Yes.
council, call your first witness.
Well, you were correct, it's John Brown.
Okay. All right, council. Oh, first, raise your right hand and be sworn again. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
And the same for you from before, Mr. Cook, since I forgot to ask you.
Forgot to ask what, I'm sorry.
I forgot to ask you if you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give was true and correct.
Oh, well, the testimony that I'm good.
Well, I mean, I had to swear you in order to do the questions, so. I
Well,
couldn't.
everything I say, I hope will be true and correct. Yes. I'm willing to say that on the record.
All right, and again, sorry about that. All right, council.
Could you please state your full name for the record?
John B. Brown,
By whom are you employed, Mr. Brown, and in what capacity?
Delta Natural Gas Company is state president,
And what is your business address?
3617 Lexington Road, Winchester, Kentucky 40391.
And did you prepare and file direct testimony in this proceeding?
Yes,
Did you file rebuttal testimony?
yes,
And did you also file testimony in support of the settlement agreement?
yes,
Were you the witness to certain data responses that were filed in this case?
yes.
Do you have any corrections to your testimony or your data responses?
In my direct testimony, I stated that we serve 33 counties, and we actually need to add Breathitt County as a 34th county.
Are there any other corrections other than that to your testimony or your responses?
No, not to my knowledge.
The witness is available for cross-examination.
Mr. Cook, do you intend to cross-examine today? Would you like
No,
me to
we
ask
do
for
not.
this?
We're just supporting the stipulation, but there may be a time when we may ask a question in support of the stipulation.
Okay, I'll ask you each witness then.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for this witness?
No, I do not.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Brown, if you can't hear me or don't understand a question, will you just ask me to repeat it or speak up? And then I know that you sponsored a lot of the testimony and a lot of the responses to data requests, but if for some reason you aren't the correct person or the best person to answer a question, if you'll just pass the question or tell me who I need to ask to get a better or more appropriate response, just let me know. I'm gonna start with an easy question because we just talked about the motion for deviation on the publication of the notice, and we've actually had 2 of those in this case, correct? I think with the initial application, there was 1, and then with the notice for the hearing. And you're familiar with those?
Yes,
And as part of that, I think there was a failure to actually publish it all in a couple of the newspapers. Did Delta seek any sort of refund or reimbursement of any amount from Kentucky Press regarding the failure to publish?
not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Do you all have any intent to do that, or have you all followed up at all with them about that?
I have not. Seems like it would be appropriate to do so.
All right. My next question is fairly simple too. It is about the tariff revisions, specifically the tariff revision that you all proposed to tariff sheet number 37. It is related to the Gas Technology Institute research tariff. And I believe that proposed revision was accepted in the settlement, correct?
Correct.
And as part of that, you just added the farm tap to the calculation in order to, I guess, it would lessen the amount that other classes have been paying for that particular rider. Is that correct?
The way I understand it, subject to check, is that there is a set rate per MCF that would be applied to those MCF. So I believe it would be a very small increase in the amount that GTI would receive.
Okay. So would that particular tariff charge now appear as a separate line item on the new bills after this case, if the commission should approve it?
I am not sure if it's a separate line item on the current Delta bills, it would be consistent. I think it is a separate, but it may not be. I can't recall that.
So regardless of how it would be consistent between the farm
That would be
tap
our
and the-
intention,
okay.
yes.
Okay. I was trying to find the ones that were a little shorter and easier to talk about, but we will move on to the non-recurring charges that you all have proposed to increase. I believe there are two, right? The reconnection and the collection. You are familiar with the case from 2024 related to, I think, a declaratory order, I believe, with meter replacement, involving meter replacement. Are you familiar?
I
guess I should phrase that differently.
read part of it. I can't recite what it is, but I am somewhat familiar.
The general idea of what you all were trying to do and get from the commission?
Yes.
Okay. So generally, as it relates to that, there was some testimony provided in that application, and I think it may have been mentioned kind of tangentially in this case, that those particular newer modules that were going in to replace the older models had the ability for some remote capabilities.
Correct.
And can you tell me whether, if you're not aware, that's fine, whether it has those new modules have the ability for remote reconnection and disconnection?
They do have the ability for remote disconnection. And now it is a technology that would be from a device that you're relatively close to the meter itself. It's not a technology that we would be able to shut it off, say, from the office. But you would be on the premise. You know, our intent would be that you would never shut off a customer unless you were physically on the premise, but maybe at the street rather than right at the house or in the backyard or wherever the meter might be. But our policies would, of course, when there's a turn on, there's some procedures about relighting and that sort of thing. So it would necessitate us being there to follow those policies on a reconnection.
So that's what I wanted to ask you about was, well, one, about the remote distance, and then two, the reconnection is different from the disconnection. And you mentioned like that you needed to be on the premise. And you mentioned the lighting. Can you tell the commission a little bit about that particular procedure, like how long that might take and what it involves?
It'd probably be best to talk to Jonathan Morphw about exactly what is done at the house.
Okay.
He'd give a better answer.
Okay. So I know that in your testimony, I think it was your direct testimony, you basically had said that the employees are not necessarily tasked on a daily basis with like reconnections or disconnections, correct?
Correct.
And then in one of the data responses to the Attorney General, I believe, you provided a table, and it may not have been you who sponsored the request, so I will preface that, or the response to the request. You provided a table of overtime labor charges, and I believe that they have steadily increased from 2022 to 2023 to 2024. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there some particular driver to those overtime hours increasing or the overtime expense increasing?
Well, there are a few reasons. I wouldn't say that there's one in particular, but of course the 811 procedures, we're doing so many more locates. If you look at the statistics on that over the last several years, it really goes up a lot by year, and we do those in-house, so we don't use a third party for that. So when we are having to do those and meet those deadlines, that's one thing that forces us to work some overtime that we didn't used to have to. The fact that we're growing and we're not increasing headcount. In fact, we're lowering headcount, so that could contribute. Although we've not decreased headcount in the field, but at least we're not increasing headcount as we're growing. And then and while I wouldn't say it is necessarily a significant contributor, but to the fact every time that we have to do a truck roll to do a reconnection, that's just, that, and with those having gone up some because the incentive is less for the customer, it's a lot easier to ask for a disconnection if it only costs $9 to get back on, as opposed to the 60 was set back in 2007, so we're just trying to get back to the level that it was at that point. So it's things like that have caused us to work more overtime.
And I think your response was that you all didn't track overtime specifically related to any of those non-recurring charges, specifically like the reconnection charge. Is that correct?
Right. You look at the day. The reason you're having to work overtime is an accumulation of all the things that you have to get done that day. So you can't, really say it's this one thing that it's just there was too much work to be done in 8 hours, so we're having to work 9.
And you mentioned truck rolls, and I know I have some questions about your all's service territory. Can you describe the general, especially towards the southeastern part of the state, your service territory down there, as far as rural, urban, that type of thing? Right.
Back when we were, independently reporting to the American Gas Association and compared with the other companies, we were one of the most, or the least dense systems in the whole country. You look at the distance on average from our customer to each other is very, very far in comparison to most, and even and more recently, doing some comparisons of our service territory with Pittsburgh, because that's one thing that we have to discuss and educate each other about, is that our service territory is so different than P&G, and so a lot of the things, the metrics look much different here. And subject to check, I want to say that maybe their density is maybe 3 times what ours is. I mean, it's definitely more than double. And so when you start thinking about that, every time that truck rolls, it's in Pittsburgh, if it takes 30 minutes, it's taken us an hour on average or something like that. So it's definitely a real consideration. And we also did some comparisons here in Kentucky with Columbia, and it's not as great a differences with us and Pittsburgh, but it's still a sizable difference, because we're just not in the urban areas. We're rural.
Well, you mentioned P&G, and I think it may have been in response to the staff's third request for information, item 30. We asked about, and it may have been in response to the AG's, I'm not sure which one it was, but we asked about, had Delta considered a seasonal type of tariff to address, I guess, incentivizing a reduction in reconnects and disconnects due to the seasonal changes. And I know that it was mentioned P&G does not have one, and I think you all had not considered it, but would you consider that in the future?
We would consider it. I would have to say I've not seen one in operation, or I don't have, haven't really thought about it, but we'd certainly look at it.
I think in your application testimony, page 14, and I know you don't have it in front of you, so I'll read it to you, lines 4 and 5. It said, reducing the number of disconnections and reconnections can help with this challenge. And it was in the context of the increasing the non-recurring charge would cause the amount of disconnection and reconnections to decline. And I know that's like the premise behind increasing those again. But does Delta have any information that they can point to already that would say, like an increase in reconnects and disconnects when the non-recurring charge went down? Or is there any numbers that would support that presumption?
I can't cite where it is, but I believe there is something filed, or at least I've seen some statistics recently that show that there has been a, not a dramatic maybe, but an increase in the number of reconnects over a 2 or 3 year period.
Does it just discourage reconnecting, or does it discourage disconnections?
Well, I guess the way our program always worked, I think, you think of it in context of the fact that we've never had a late fee. So, that I think sets Delta apart from, pretty much any other utility in the state, that we've never had a late fee. So I think that, our, that shows that we really want to work with our customers, and we don't want to let a technicality get a computer program that just, slams the customer with a charge based on a technicality. So then, but what that does is it puts the disconnection, it's more important. That's really our only ability to enforce payment, if you will. So we try to be as flexible as we can, but when it comes time to disconnect, so of course some disconnections are because of non-pay, and then others are just people seeing that the monthly customer charge is so much, and if I don't need gas over the summer, I can turn off and then turn back on. So it's really it's the combination of those two things. So I think that our thought has always been, I don't, I'm sure we don't have any research to necessarily back that up, but that a $60 reconnect would have someone think twice about disconnecting for the summer if they know that they're going to have to pay that much to get reconnected.
So if they're only using gas really in the winter for heat, then they may, if there wasn't a fee, they would
Right.
disconnect for the summer.
So, we feel like that is all kind of connected, and where we don't, we're not getting, any compensation when someone has a late fee. So, and then when that reconnection was reduced to $9, then, someone can go off and get back on, and there's just not much consequence there.
Those are not necessarily disconnects for late fees. I mean,
Correct.
for being late.
And is a truck roll required for every reconnection?
Yes. It would be very, very rare that you would, it'd just be, I would say yes, there's,
Okay.
unless it was right next door to the office or something. But yes, it's a physical get someone in the truck and go, and then, and you're and that reconnection, and like I say, it's not just turning the valve, you've got to make sure that the pilots are relight inside. You have to coordinate with the customer to make sure that they're there to let you inside the house. So it's really a time-consuming thing when you have to do it.
So as to when someone disconnects and say it's not for non-payment, do you all ask people when they call, or do you all have like a script you read that asks them why they're disconnecting? Like, are they going with a different service? Are they going to propane? Or are they, do you all track that at all?
Not that I'm aware of.
So I know we've talked a little bit about your service territory with regard to the effort it takes to go and reconnect for somebody. With regard to the service territory and your customer charge, I think that there's been some discussion, at least there was in the last rate case, of trying to incorporate the farm tap customers with the other Delta classes, customer classes. And I know that in this case, that was not proposed. And is that something that Delta is considering in the future, or is it your all's intent to just try to keep the farm tap customers that you all have acquired separate due to expense? Because I think that was the reason given.
I think that we like the rate structure the way it was set in the last case. The fact that we do have a separate tariff for the farm tap customers, because it is a different service, and when those, and it's for the customers that are being supplied by a line that we don't own. It's not our line, and so that there are different costs associated with that. So it makes sense that they receive a lower rate, because they don't need to be paying for the Delta pipeline, because they're not benefiting from that.
When you all requested, I think in your application, the initial request was $33.60, and I recognize the stipulation is obviously less. Was there any consideration to the economic issues that exist in the territory right now?
Well, we're definitely aware of that, and kind of pretty much the stipulation kept the increase pretty consistent between the customer charge and the volumetric charge. There are different ways of looking at that. As far as the monthly customer charge, the more that is paid consistently in that fixed charge, the lower the volumetric charge is. So for someone on a budget, or it does spread the cost more evenly throughout the year, and it kind of makes the winter bills lower, which could be an argument for that. It actually benefits the customer that's struggling to pay the utility bills.
So I guess that kind of leads me to my next question, because non-residential customer charge and the distribution charge were also addressed in this case. And with regard to all of that, I know you mentioned the benefit that they have a lower MCF rate. As a whole, did Delta consider allowing its customers to have more flexibility in trying to control their bills? Or was that outweighed by what you mentioned a minute ago?
I would guess, probably the answer to that is, we really do, and you can talk to Mr. Feltner into more detail about the cost of service study, but I would say our stipulation agreement leans more on the cost of service study, and in the different classes, how much are the fixed charges, how much of the costs are fixed, how much of the costs are variable, and trying to line that up a little closer. But as a, I would say as a negotiation tool, or just as a compromise, you'd say, we're not proposing to go all the way to what the cost of service study would suggest. So I guess the answer would be yes, we did consider those or we would have proposed even a much higher monthly customer charge, because that's what the cost of service study would show.
So, I don't know if this was actually quantified in any way, but are you aware of, or believe that I guess, since you all stipulated to a lower charge still, it's approximately $29, do you think that charge increase will result in any customers leaving Delta's service?
I would not think so. I would hope not. You think about in the whole scheme of things, it's $5 more a month. So, I believe that compared to a lot of the other costs that our customers are seeing going up, that it's probably in line with what they've seen.
So, I guess, tied to that, did the increased customer charge have any impact at all on Delta's forecasted demand?
I would say no, we didn't. We didn't speculate on how that would impact demand.
Okay. And then I know that you sponsored the testimony in support of the stipulation. And I think with regard to like the distribution charge and the small non-residential customer charge, there isn't a lot of testimony provided to support those being accepted in the settlement. And does Delta believe that the evidence in the record supports that regardless? Is that the position then?
Yes, with the cost of service study and such.
Okay. And then another question, and I don't know whether you're the best person to ask or not for this one, but it appears that the revenue and the adjustments provided as exhibits to the settlement used the information from the AG as the basis. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's not Delta's initial, adjustments and information.
Well, on the exhibit to the stipulation, what we did, we started with our filed position, and then and showed in one column the reconciliation from our filed position to the Attorney General's filed position, and then we took it from there to the final.
Okay. We may have a post-hearing data request to follow up on that.
That's fine.
And I will move on to the long-term incentive compensation.
Okay.
And if you are, and I have notes that would indicate you might not be the best person, but I'm going to start with you, so I can, if you can, that's good. But
Okay.
I think there were several requests related to long-term incentive compensation. Specifically, I'm going to reference the Attorney General's first request, response number 35, and the AG's request, the second request, item 13, along with, I think, it's the direct testimony of David Ditimore. So you mentioned that you were familiar with the final order in the last rate case, and I think there was a portion of it, and I will just go ahead and read it so you don't have to find it. It's therefore Delta should be prepared in its next rate case to demonstrate that this portion of its long-term incentive plan targets and payouts benefit ratepayers. If Delta maintains the expense levels between rate cases only to increase them during a rate case, customers do not benefit from this portion of the long-term incentive plan. I believe this is from page 9. So in that case, I think that Delta included $49,989 worth of long-term incentive in its forecasted test year. Does that sound approximately correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe that you all reached a settlement in that case, correct?
Mhm.
And in that case, in that final order, the commission modified the settlement, correct?
Yes.
I think, and reduced the amount of long-term incentive compensation that was included for recovery down to 20% of the requested ask.
Yes.
Okay. And so in response to the AG's first request, item 29, I believe Delta provided a chart of the yearly long-term incentive compensation expense. Does that sound familiar at all?
Yes.
Okay. And you can see that it appears to go from approximately, 49 or 50,000 and to all the way up to now, it is approximately, I think it was 254,000 in this case, approximately, as an ask to be included in base rates for recovery. Can you explain that large increase?
Well, one of the reasons, and it would show up as an increase in 1 year, is that I personally was not in the long-term incentive plan until recently. So the numbers that we were dealing with in the last case, I was still being compensated under an agreement from the acquisition that did not include that.
So would that shift relate also to the overall compensation that it shows for you in the application going down?
Yes.
It corresponds?
Yes. I mean, it's not, it's all that same issue. It's
Yeah.
not, and it's not one for one, but it's, yes.
Yeah, the math that doesn't work out
Right,
one
right.
for one, but that's kind of
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So you would agree with me that right now, as was filed in the stipulation, the amount to be included in base rates is more than 20% of the long-term incentive compensation based on financial incentives.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if there's like a really good way to ask this, but it's 65% of Delta's requested amount, and then 50% of the allocated amount. How did you all come up with those percentages then?
Well, and Mr. Packer can be more eloquent about this, but as far as the 65% for Delta, if you mentioned the 20% from the last case, well, that measure in the current program has been reduced to 15%. So if we were apples and apples to the last case, it goes from 20 to 15%. So then, as we were working through this case, we understood better the makeup of the LTI and the perspective of then 50% of it are these restricted stock units that just they vest on the passage of time. They're not based on a financial metric. And we did not propose those in the last case that way. It was an oversight on our part. So the 65% is including the 50%, which I would suggest there's just new information presented in this case about really what that 50% means, and plus the 15%. So that's the 65% on the Delta employees. And then I think the
Oh, can I stop you?
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I have a question, and I don't wanna get too
No.
far down the road on that. You mentioned that the restricted shares are time-based and not like a financial type metric.
right.
So you would disagree with I think it was Mr. Ditimore's testimony that it is a financial metric?
Well, I think in a conversation there, kind of fine points about that, but in the, at the end of the day, depending on what your definition is, the award is granted, the amount of money, is set aside in shares of stock, and then there's a vesting period, and then you receive that. So, it's not the number of shares change or anything over time. It's just the only thing that happens. So it's really it's a method of retention for your top people. It's really the only retention tool that we have in the company right now as far as an incentive, and that's the purpose that it serves.
Okay, so, well, you've already answered about the employee retention. So you use that to incentivize people to be committed to Delta
Correct.
and stay. And then as far as who is able to qualify for that particular long-term incentive, is it mainly just you here at Delta and then other executives at the other affiliates or at P&G? Or is it, who is eligible for?
It's the subject to check directors and above, so there would be 3 of us at Delta eligible.
And is that the same with your parent company?
Yes.
Basically, okay. Okay, and I'm so sorry, I interrupted you right where you were moving on to the other percentage explanation, so you can.
Well, I don't think that there's any different theory. I would say that I would say the theory's the same. The reduction from 65 to 50% on the others is more of a negotiation percentage.
So is there anything that the directors could do to receive more restricted shares of stock, or is it just a set amount every year?
It's a set percentage of base compensation. So the answer is no. I mean, it's based on your base compensation. So if you have a 10%, if 10% of your LTI is that, then you would get 10% of that in that component.
So, as far as the other type of the PSU or the performance, I think, is that the?
Performance shares?
Yes, the performance shares. There were several criteria for what and how you got the performance shares: the total shareholder return, the rate-based growth through acquisitions, and then maintaining O&M expense.
Mm-hmm.
So would you agree that those are all financial type metrics?
Yes, but I think the conclusion in the last case, and in our position, is that the O&M, the O&M expense is certainly a direct benefit to our customers, and that is why that, I believe, was permitted to be passed through in the last case.
And I know, I know this is in the record in a variety of like forms and ways, but do you feel like Delta has been successful in maintaining its operating maintenance to the degree that would benefit ratepayers over since the last rate case?
I mean, I believe that we have really done all that we can. We've, I mean, there's a long list in the record of things that we have done and I don't know if you want me to go into some of those things, but I mean, short answer is yes, I believe that we have done all that we can do in this environment that we find ourselves in.
No, it is in the record, it's just in different places, but
Right.
you feel like you've been successful in.
I mean, I think the kind of the capstone of all of that is that, in the case, the last case, we had approval for 162 employees, full-time employees in the revenue requirement, and coming in this case, we only asked for 149 positions. So the fact that we have reduced headcount by 13 over the last 3.5 years, I think really shows where our head is about trying to run the company as efficiently as we can, and we can talk about the things that we did to do that. But that's the big summary of what we've done.
Okay. I actually think that that's all I have for Mr. Brown.
Just a couple of questions. Going back to the long-term incentive, can the long-term incentive be used in deferred comp? Can you defer that into deferred compensation?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And then to go back to the reconnection fee or charge, do you know the percentage that are disconnects due to non-payment versus seasonal disconnect and reconnect?
I do not. I'm sure we could find that out, but I don't know that.
Have you thought about having a seasonal tariff where the disconnect and reconnect for those customers wouldn't be, the 60? Is that something you've looked at?
We haven't looked at it. I don't know if Mr. Feltner is more familiar with maybe a charge like that, but we've not. Of course, we're open to consider anything, but we've not looked at that.
And then I'm looking at your direct testimony, page 11. Can you just walk us through the bring your own device policy and how you came up with that, and how, from a cybersecurity perspective, is that more risk or less risk?
Well, I think that that technology has basically made what might at one time not been safe. There are tools, I believe it's called Intune, that the corporation uses that actually it pretty much takes over your personal device, and so anything that company data, it separates it from what else is on the phone. And so even to the extent, I just noticed this the other day, but like if you see something and you want to take a picture of it and save it to your photos, it won't allow, if it's an image that has come from the company, I can't take a picture of it and save it to my phone because it's got this, I guess, firewall, if you will, built into the phone. So one of the the benefits of being part of of Essential Utilities is the cybersecurity group that oversees all of that. And so, I think that yes, it's a risk, but I think it's mitigated very well and effectively. But just as far as the program, it's just been pretty simple that this is just for non-union employees, and this has been across the whole footprint of Essential Utilities. That non-union employees' devices are now owned by the employees, and we're doing our own plans now.
So you didn't receive any pushback from the company being able to monitor someone's personal phone?
I mean, I'm sure there was pushback. I mean, I didn't personally, receive that, but I'm sure IT did, I think that in parts of our company, on the water side, I think they had it that way for many years, and so it was really kind of harmonizing the gas company with the water company.
And does it provide a cost savings?
In the long run, it will.
And then union employees are still issued company phones, correct?
Yes.
It's an interesting strategy. This is the first time I've come across this.
Well,
so-
it's, I think it just shows, I mean, we're looking under every rock to find, cost savings, and it's, it's not just that. And, something that just in thinking that wasn't necessarily in the record about that, but we, unfortunately, we have customers or not even customers that steal our gas. And that's something that, that we do on a routine basis. If we catch that, we're aggressive about it. And even right now, we are, I mean, we had a situation that we notified the PSC of several years ago, and that we worked with the FBI, and there was a conviction, and we're receiving restitution now. That was a lot of work and a lot of expense on the company to pursue that, but now that money we're crediting back against the GCR, and so the customer is getting the benefit of the fact that we were aggressive on that. The property tax, a couple years ago, our property tax bill went way up, and along with the industry, and we got some things fixed in legislation recently to get that back in line. So the BYOB, I mean, there's just a whole list of things, and it's not just technology, but it's we're really trying to work hard to control and bring down the cost of things that we can.
Okay, thank you.
On the same line about the bring your own device program, what if an employee doesn't want to allow use of their own device or doesn't have a device?
I think that and we don't have any at Delta that proposed that, but I understand that the company's position would be that you're in the office and you use the computer at the office, and you're just not available around the clock. So I don't really know how that works, but fortunately we didn't have to cross that bridge with our employees.
Are the employees compensated for their extra minutes or their expenses?
These are, for the most part, salary employees, so that arguably that's, in their compensation.
And your answer to Commissioner Reagan's question was that you aren't sure if it had cost savings?
Well, it will have cost savings, because, the new employees, there are some, when we first went on the plan, the employees, we are being reimbursed $60 per month to help defray the cost of us.
Employees.
Of employees
Okay.
are. But, and so that's kind of a wash. I mean, you know, with what, but now, but going forward, we were grandfathered in. Going forward, new employees are not going to get that. So, you know, eventually to join our company, you know, that you'll be using your personal device without compensation.
It's about half of my cell phone bill, I think.
Okay.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
so it's, right.
Wait, will you finish?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. In your direct testimony, you talked about closing 5 offices as part of the cost savings, because you have fewer and fewer customers paying in person. Have you had complaints about that, or do your customers like that?
We, you know, it's definitely not been a, you know, a popular decision with a hand, you know, with a group of customers. You know, we were able to roll out at the same time the e-account and mobile capabilities and self-service. So, you know, you have a population of our customers that were very happy to receive that technology that we had not provided to date. So, we have been looking at, and, you know, and in fact, conversation this morning, you know, just trying to do a better job of finding the customers who are struggling with the technology and that we can give extra help to, and to try to alleviate some of the issues. But, you know, as with a lot of things, you know, I know that some of the complaints that we received had to do with, well, there's no way to pay without a fee, and there's nowhere to pay. But, you know, we do offer the EFT program where people can pay, set up online, and that doesn't cost anything to connect to your checking account. If you pay with a check, you know, that there's no fee either. You know, online you can do that. And we still have, in those 5 locations, we still have drop boxes that a customer can walk up, and if they have a check or money order, put a, you know, envelope in and still not have any fee or charge if they do, you know. So, or they can mail it.
So they just couldn't bring cash and get change,
Right.
but they could drop a check?
Yes.
At all those same 5 locations?
Exactly.
Or money order.
Yeah.
I was looking at the lag time. So for 2024, it was 25.74 days, is, if I read your testimony correctly. It's 18% reduction from the 2023 longer payback periods. I was just wondering, if, I mean, 25.74 days still sounds a little bit high. Do you think not having a late fee contributes to people not worrying about whether they're paying late?
I mean, you know, you could definitely make that argument. The only, I mean, all I know is that when we look at statistics back before COVID, you know, our goals are not, our goals are to get back closer to where we were, and we never had a late fee then. So, you know, I think the task for us is to figure out, you know, what has changed and how, you know, we'd like to get back to those fewer days like before COVID without the late fee. But, you know, that could be, you know, that could be a reason if someone's sitting there and has to make a choice about which bills to pay, and they know that Delta doesn't have a late fee. It could be hurting us from that perspective.
Sometimes it's a motivator for me, if I have time at lunch to go pay it or not.
Right.
Here's gonna be like,
Yeah.
okay. As regarding the HEA, the 45,000 that your shareholders contributed, I think that was $150 for 341 customers as it averaged out. And being this is a rural and sometimes high poverty area that you're serving, is that enough? Do you know if it was all used?
We actually have, coming out of the winter, about $100,000 left in the account. Now that includes the 45,000 that we just added to it. So, and we have been carrying for a few years a balance in that. So we see more being spent, but definitely by the balance, it shows that, I'm glad that we, are able to honor those requests. And, and then part of the settlement agreement is that we have proposed to increase that 45,000 and make it 65,000 to give us more to work with on that.
So even though you had some left, as part of the settlement, you're increasing it. How do
Yes.
customers know that it's available?
Well, there are bill inserts and flyers and such, but even when customers call, when they call the call center and are struggling to pay, the representatives will bring that up. And I actually listened to a couple of customer calls because I was interested in how it's being presented. And I'm sure that we have folks that work in those centers that are better than others. But the calls that I listened to, I was very pleased with how the employee showed compassion to the customer, and then also, asked them, have you been to community action? Did you know that you had, could potentially, and would actually go through some of the criteria. It's like, well, according to what you tell me, it sounds like that you would be, you would qualify for something, and I urge you to go, and this is how you do it.
So the community action agency administers it for you and
Yes.
chooses who's eligible
Mhm.
based on income?
Yes.
Do you track how many of your customers are eligible for LIHEAP, or does that apply to, it does apply to natural gas?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, we, subject to check, I think it was about 240 customers qualified for LIHEAP, and it was less than $40,000 that they received. I think it was about $38,000 that they received in LIHEAP in total.
So much is uncertain right now in our nation about how the economy's gonna work, and lots of changes, but do you have any idea, or did you speculate? When this was filed in November, we sure didn't know what was gonna be happening by April, but there's a lot of uncertainty around LIHEAP. Do you know whether that's gonna impact your customers? Do you have an expectation?
Our folks, reminded me that, LIHEAP has always been something that is bipartisan, that both parties have supported. So the hope is that if nothing, if a lot of things don't get funded, that we'll figure out a way to get LIHEAP funded. But I was at least, pleased in a way to see that while $40,000 is a significant amount of money, it's like if we put 20 more thousand in, LIHEAP could be cut, and we could fill the gap in some respects. So it's at least it's not. I really didn't know if it was at least it's not like 300,000 that we're going to be dealing with a cut.
We
if
don't
it
know.
does. We don't know. We don't know. But
Water companies across the country were advocating for the renewal of the LIWAP program for
Mhm.
water assistance. Does your company take an active role in anything like that, encouraging?
Not that I have heard of, but Mr. Packer may have more information on that.
Okay. And then, switching gears, the forecasted test period ends June of '26. So at this point, we know all of the forecasted test period except 4 months-ish. Because it's next year.
Next year,
Yeah. Has Delta done this before? What's your experience with using the forecasted time period?
This was our second.
Okay. And the last time was your last rate case?
Yeah, 3.5 years ago.
And assume it worked out for you, and this is why you're gonna use it again, but it's supposed to reduce regulatory lag. And I imagine that this uncertainty that I mentioned a little bit before, probably contributes to the desirability of being able to reduce the time between your rate cases and that regulatory lag. Is that something that comes into play when you're considering that?
Definitely,
That was a very inartful way to ask that question. Thank you for understanding. I appreciate
but it's the crux of the issue, I mean, it really is.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. That makes me feel better about the way I was trying to ask that. But it does seem like the forecasted test period and reducing the regulatory lag, rather than basing on historical test year when things are quite uncertain at this time. Kind of makes sense to me. Okay. Does anyone else have follow-ups?
Can I ask one to
Of
Mr.
course.
Brown, just because
Mhm.
I'm not sure that he's gonna be the person, but just in case, so you don't have to come back. I don't think it's specifically stated in the stipulation, but there was an error in the calculation for the employees' compensation related to benefits that I think Delta acknowledged, at least in the rebuttal. And was that included, that adjustment was included in the stipulation, or at least recognized as part of the information in the stipulation, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's all I wanted.
Yeah, and that schedule that I referred to earlier, as far as the first schedule, the stipulation, if I'm remembering, the first column, which is the reconciliation from the company's position to the Attorney General's position, you'll see that come out there.
That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Anything further for this witness?
I just have brief redirect.
I'm sorry?
I have brief redirect.
Yes, please.
Mr. Brown, you were mentioning in response to questions that you recalled there being a data response in the record that identified the number of reconnections and disconnections. I'm going to ask Ms. Lloyd to display on your monitor the response to PSC's third request for information number 16. Was this the data response that you recalled?
Yes, I was going to say, I knew it was green, but I didn't know where it was.
You were right, it is a green chart. And just to walk through that chart for a moment, based on the information you have here, did the number of disconnections increase from 2023 to 2024?
Yes.
By about how many?
A little less than 300. I mean, it goes from 726 to 1,015 reconnections, I believe, if I'm on the right column.
Yes. And how about disconnections? Did those increase from 2023 to 2024?
Yes. 1617 to 1920, or 1980.
And then the second part of that question asked for accounts where there were multiple disconnection services, and did that number increase from 2023 to 2024?
Yes, in both columns.
So both disconnections and reconnections increased as well.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, I'm going to try to wade just for one question into the long-term incentive compensation, but just wanted to make sure your testimony here is clear. Is it your opinion that Delta is requesting any long-term incentive compensation related to financial metrics in the settlement agreement?
No, not financial metrics.
That's all that I have.
As is our practice, I will excuse your lead witness, but is there any reason why this witness couldn't sit down? Okay. You're free for a minute. Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Counsel, can I answer this?
Before we call our next witness, I did want to mention, and we're happy to file in the record, Delta was not charged by Kentucky Press for the newspapers that failed to publish, and we're happy to provide that in the record if you would like that information, but there was no charge.
Okay. Yeah, if there's some proof that they erased an invoice or something like that, please file.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Next witness.
Our next witness is Jonathan Morphw.
please raise your right hand and be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Jonathan Wright Morphw,
And by whom are you employed and what is your title?
Delta Natural Gas Company, Director of Operations,
And what is your business address?
3617 Lexington Road, Winchester, Kentucky, 40391.
And did you file direct testimony in this proceeding?
I did.
And were you also the sponsor of certain data requests in this case?
Yes.
And do you have any corrections to your testimony or those data responses?
I do have a couple, similar to Mr. Brown's. I had stated that we were providing service in 33 counties in Kentucky. It's actually 34. Berthoud County, I had overlooked that. We have a couple farm taps there.
Okay.
And the other item was on our, and I don't know if it's worthy of mention, but on our Nicholasville pipeline project, in my testimony, it states we were going to do it in a 9.3 in the first phase and 7.3 miles in the second phase. And we've actually pretty well divided that right in the middle. It's 8.3 in the first and 8.3 in the second.
Thank you. Other than the clarifications or corrections that you have provided, do you have any other changes to your testimony or responses?
I do not.
The witness is available for questions.
No questions, Chair.
Well, Mr. Morphew, I
Yes.
think you had at least one question passed to you, so we'll start there. As it relates to the reconnection charge, I know Mr. Brown said a truck has to go out.
That's right.
Can you tell us a little bit more about like what that procedure is for a reconnection? Because I know he also mentioned that you need the customer to be home. So can you give us like the whole picture of that?
Sure. We will dispatch a customer service representative to the site to turn the meter on. But prior to establishing service back inside the home, we have our customer service reps go in the home and verify that the equipment is safe to operate, that the venting practices are followed to see that proper venting of water heaters, furnaces, that type of thing, are meet the code and requirement, and test the house line, the house piping, to make sure there are no leaks in the home. And then we turn the meter on.
And I think Mr. Brown may have mentioned it sometimes takes a little bit of time. Can you have an estimate as to how long you think one of these normally takes?
From
From like the time the
There,
truck
okay.
tires roll?
Sure. Well, from the time they leave the office?
Mhm.
Okay, it could be, as Mr. Brown said, it could be an hour or hour and a half. We're so rural, it just depends on the location. So you could be looking at an hour and a half to get that accomplished for a residence. But, if it's somewhere close, it could probably be done in 30 minutes.
So the inside inspection, 15 or 20 minutes then, or
I'd give that 30.
30? Okay.
Yeah. I would say on average across the company, 30 to 45 minutes would probably catch it.
I think that is all we have actually for Mr. Morphew.
Thank you.
So for every reconnection, the customer service rep goes into the home and checks the lines. You can't ever just flip a switch to turn it back on.
Yes, and yes, and yes.
Okay.
You can flip a switch and do that, but we're not gonna do that because we don't know what that customer's done inside that home since they were turned off.
Okay,
They could hook up something illegally, some kind of space heater or anything like that, and we're not gonna stand for that.
it's a safety issue?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there national guidelines or PHMSA guidelines, or are you allowed to just flip the switch? Like, you said you can, like,
I've been here 38 years and have operated under that, what I just described the entire time. To say that I've ever checked or challenged
okay.
to see
It's
that.
just not something you're.
It's just not something I've not been interested in doing. None of us have. We go with that NFPA fuel gas code on our safety requirements on our house piping, the federal guidelines and state where they exist. But to say that I've ever challenged to see that we could do that, I'm going to answer that and say that it could probably be done because I don't think every company is quite as thorough as we are.
Mhm.
That's what I was gonna ask.
You think so?
No.
Redirect?
No.
Okay. Mr. Morphew, you're excused.
Okay, thank you.
I'm of a mind to continue, but if anybody needs a break, wave your hand at me, and you're not my prisoners. I'll consider it. All right, next witness, counsel.
Our next witness, Your Honor, is Mr. William Packer.
Raise your right hand at this point, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Please have a seat. Counsel.
Would you please state your full name for the record?
William C. Packer,
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
employed by Essential Utilities, Inc., as the Vice President, Regulatory Accounting and Regional Controller.
And what is your business address?
762 West Lancaster Avenue, Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania.
Did you cause to be prepared and filed in this proceeding direct and rebuttal testimony?
I did.
Are you also the sponsor of certain responses to data requests in this proceeding?
I am.
Do you have any corrections or updates to your testimony or any of those data responses?
I do not.
And I have one clarifying question for you from Mr. Brown's testimony that we just heard. May employees who receive long-term incentive compensation defer that compensation?
No, they may not.
Witness is available for cross.
No questions, Chair.
Staff.
Thank you. I think Mr. Brown was able to answer our questions to our satisfaction, so he lucked out there. We don't have anything else.
Okay. Mr. Regan? I don't have questions either.
Oh, wow.
So, thanks for coming to Kentucky.
I love Kentucky, for the record. I love Kentucky. Thank you.
Here, the teamwork is happening, so.
Yeah, well, thank you.
But
Pleasure
which?
to be here.
Any reason why this witness couldn't be excused? No? You're excused, sir.
Thank you.
Our next witness, Your Honor, is Abdul Aziz Odusanya.
Mr. Odesanya? Please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Have a seat, sir.
Thank you, Ms.
Counsel?
Would you please state your full name for the record?
Yes, my name is Abdul Aziz Olalekan Odusanya,
And by whom are you employed and in what
Delta Natural
capacity?
Gas, as a state controller,
Right. What is your business address?
3617 Lexington Road, Winchester, Kentucky.
Did you cause to be prepared and filed in this proceeding direct testimony?
Yes,
Did you also sponsor responses to data requests?
yes, I did.
Do you have any corrections or updates to that testimony or those data responses?
No,
The witness is available for cross.
Mr.
No
Frazier?
questions, Chair.
Thank you. So I have a few questions, and if you don't know the answer or need to refer it to somebody else, just let me know. I'll start with, are you aware, is there any of the remaining rate case expense from the 2021 rate case on the books right now?
no. The
Okay.
last was amortized in December
Okay.
2024.
Then the next question I have is basically just a follow-up and an update to commission staff's third request. It was item number 12. It was a request asking about the financing approval that you all received earlier this year. And I think that the request said that nothing had been done as far as issuing debt, indebtedness or anything. Do you have any updates with regard to that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Initially, we had anticipated the debt to be issued in December, but this was done effective February 28, 2025, and our financing agreement has since been approved.
So, but you haven't done anything beyond that?
No,
Okay. Do you still anticipate, I think the one of the dates was like June or July of this year. Is that still the anticipated date as far as the first tranche being?
No, the first tranche was completed February
February
28th. The 15.1 million was completed on February 28th, and we did submit all the financing and the documents to the PSA.
So the second tranche, the 18, is still gonna be the 18.89 million?
Yes, and we're still targeting June for now.
So I'm gonna shift gears a little bit to the requested regulatory asset. I believe in the stipulation, the Attorney General did not object to the establishment of a regulatory asset, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then, specifically, I'd like to talk about the responses to Attorney General's first request, item 46, and there were several little letters with that one, but specifically, my first questions relate to C. Can you explain what's on the table on the second page, what that table represents? It was on the, like, the way the response appears, it appears there's a table on a page by itself.
And what's the request, Mariah?
It's AG first request, 46, item 46C. Took me a minute to realize that you have it pop up on the screen there, so just let me know when you can see it.
Aziz, can you see?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I can say it.
Can you explain a little bit about what that response represents there?
I'll defer to Mr. Bill Parker for this. It's on tax repair. Yes.
Okay. Well, then, he may not have lucked out after all, because,
Did I excuse him?
I'm not sure. Did you excuse him?
Yeah, you should have gotten while we got getting what's good. Unless there's strong objection, we'll allow the recall. It's fine.
Okay, and I don't know who would be the best person to ask. It might be you, as it looks like you specifically sponsored the D part, I guess, to this one. The response about the allocation was that Delta and the other two companies split the allocation of the tax study 1/3 each way. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you explain how you all arrived at that 1/3 allocation?
Yes, so the total expense when we contracted E&Y was to look at the three natural gas entities, PNG, People's Natural Gas, People's Gas, and Delta Natural Gas. So they estimated that they would spend about the same number of time for each entity, and that's why we decided to allocate it equally among the three entities for all the charges we received.
So there's not a specific part of the cost allocation manual that you felt appropriately addressed this particular tax study?
Can you please repeat that question?
Was there not a specific part of the cost allocation manual that you all have that would have addressed this particular tax study?
There will be, because in the cost allocation manual will have also does mention where there are costs incurred, they will be allocated accordingly to Delta based on ratios. In this case, we decided to use 1/3 for each entity.
Okay. And I'll just say, all of Mr. Packer's items, they can be answered in a post-hearing data request. So we'll just make that a little easier and cleaner. There are some expenses listed in that chart, if we can look at it. I know you didn't sponsor it. That appear to be not, actually it's the chart after, the, table after, page 2 of 2, there's several items in red that were not included in the forecasted pro forma. Do you see that?
Not yet.
Okay, sorry.
I have an idea of what you're saying, but not yet.
Subpart
Are you
D.
talking about the
Yes,
tax repair study?
still subpart
Yes.
D.
Yes, I'm aware of this.
Okay, so we've established that the Y, E and Y is the 1/3
Yes.
expense. And then there was one in red in that category. Why was that particular expense not allocated to Delta?
No, it was eventually allocated.
It was,
But
okay.
as at the time that we submitted all the information that we had, we did not have that invoice from E and Y. So that's why it's not. So you see the total amount that we requested for, about 162, while the final amount will include that we're carrying in our books.
Okay, and you may not know this, and that's okay, I can put it in a post-hearing data request. But the vendor below the E and Y is RCC.
Yes.
See that? Can you tell us how they were involved in the tax study?
Yes, so this is regulated capital. They were engaged to review our power tax, the tax software that we use, to make sure that it's compatible and be able to use for the tax repair study and get our historical numbers in line.
And so invoices from them were also included in this requested reg asset, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay,
invoices related to this particular engagement, because we do have other engagements with RCC.
okay. So it appears based on this particular response that the initial invoices started to come in 2023. This project was started in 2023, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And that is over a year ago, right? It's well over a year ago now, right?
yes.
Okay. Why didn't Delta come in then and ask for a permission or approval to establish a regulatory asset?
Well, subject to check and more, we can provide more information on this. But from our perspective, we knew that we did not want to just book a regulatory asset without permission, without approval from the PSC. And part of the thought was that since we'll be filing a rate case, this can also still be requested for.
So you mentioned that you all don't want to book a reg asset without approval.
Yeah.
So what is this particular expense currently showing on your books now?
So we have a reserve to book against it, a contra liability, and then just expense on the income statement too.
So it's just showing as an expense on the income
Yes,
statement?
net zero in the balance sheet, but then expense on the income statement.
So I know that you weren't necessarily the sponsor of every particular request that mentioned this, but I would believe that you would quantify the savings from this tax study as approximately $13 million, correct? Approximately, for the Delta portion of it.
Again, I'll defer that to Mr. Parker, but subject to check, I think it's approximately.
Okay, well, that actually led me into a posterior data request. Staff would like to request a breakdown of what that 13 million encompasses, specifically, a breakdown of that. So, I am completely gonna shift gears now to the inflationary adjustment that you all made to certain expense categories. And you're familiar with that, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And I believe that in an Excel, and it's got a big long name, but it was in response to commission staff's, second request, item 1. It was tab 57, D 2.2, and it was the natural Excel page, tab, I guess, in that one. Just let me know when you. It's like way over on the bottom of the tabs.
And was it tab 57?
Yes.
Yes, I think we.
Okay. Basically, you would agree that you all did not apply an inflationary adjustment to every expense category listed on that Excel sheet, correct?
Yes,
And you clearly like went through and selected very specific categories, and a few of them were like contractor services, and I think employee relations expense, and then some of the plain ones like down at the bottom were postage, shipping, gasoline, those type of items. They are a little further down on the actual.
Are we displaying the wrong schedule?
I think so. Based on what she said, it's different.
Would you run through again what we need to be looking at?
It would be it was the Excel, it was a zip file on our system. The tab 57, and then D 2.2 natural.
And these were the Excel files initially provided in our response to PSC 154?
No, PSC 2, item 1.
Was this a confidential spreadsheet by chance?
I am not sure, but I can probably get my answer without him having to look at the specific items. But because we were hoping you could explain why you selected those particular items to add the 1% adjustment to.
Well, I'll prefer to look at the schedule. I can tell you that overall, we had a 3% escalation every year, inflationary adjustment. But for our forecasted test year, since we're using half of 2025 and half of 2026, so that's why you see a 1.5% escalation for those expenses. Generally in the schedule, or based on what we use for the forecasted test year.
And I think you all used you said the Fred scale for inflation, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason you didn't, like, according to this Excel sheet, choose the other expense categories, was there something inherently different about the ones you did not choose?
I think I prefer to see the schedule.
We can ask that we'll ask that as a post-hearing data request. That way you can have an opportunity to review the ones you didn't choose and respond.
I have found the schedule.
It's not confidential.
It is not
Okay.
confidential.
There's a little bit different procedure for.
Yes.
For confidential basis, Candace's.
I think there are some
Okay.
confidential files in that zip drive, but this one,
Okay.
I didn't wanna cause an issue.
Here's a mouse.
Yeah, I was gonna struggle with that mouse.
increases that I'm talking about are listed in column N.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the other expenses actually we used, those have escalation of the 3% that I mentioned before. So if you look at column F, so then you see where it says increase labor 1.5%. So there are some that we did use 3%, which is, which comes to 1.5% in column F.
So the 1% ones, like the additional adjustments in column N, then is that on top or just representative of something different?
No, it's not on top, that's representative of what we used for those projections.
Just as an aside, I think that, as a post-hearing data request, we would like to get the Excel sheets that represent the numbers in the settlement. You all filed the Excel sheets, but they're hard-coded, and we would like to get the like with the formulas and the cells unlocked, in a post-hearing data request. And I don't know if that will be you or not, but I know you do a lot of those.
Yes, we will get them to you.
Okay, I think that is, that's all staff has.
I don't have further questions either. Any regrets?
No, Your Honor.
Any reason why this witness couldn't be excused? No? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I don't see any hands waving for a break, so call your next witness, please.
Sure. The next witness is Jeffrey Werner.
Please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Counsel may ask.
Could you please state your full name for the record?
Sure, my name is Jeffrey W. Werner Jr.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am employed with the Prime Group LLC and I am a principal.
And what is your business address?
It is 2604 Sunningdale Place East, LaGrange, Kentucky 40031.
And did you file direct and rebuttal testimony in this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
And were you the witness that sponsored responses to certain data requests in this case?
Yes, I was.
Do you have any corrections to your testimony or those responses?
No, I do not.
The witness is available for cross-examination.
Thank you.
Mr. Treasurer.
No questions
Sorry,
here.
Counsel for the Treasurer. I gave you a promotion.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe, and I will give you the opportunity to take the question that Mr. Brown, I think, passed kind of to you regarding, and I know that specifically the cost allocation study, I think, wasn't necessarily you, but he mentioned you, so I'll start with you. Did Delta consider the effect of the increased fixed charge as it relates to the MCF and in lowering it and a customer's ability to control their bill when it comes to the MCF usage in the request for the $33 and then the settlement at $29?
So that question would likely be best suited for Mr. Feltner,
Okay.
who was more closely in charge of the rate design and the allocation that you speak of.
Okay. And then, can you explain, in the settlement, there was an adjustment, and I think it appears in the middle column, the AG testimony to final settlement, there was an adjustment made of $8,438 to the cash working capital. amount.
So, you're referring to the difference between the 206,000 that's shown in the revenue requirement for the stipulation and what the AG originally proposed, which I believe was 197,000.
Yes.
Subject to check, I believe that the difference there relates to the difference in the settled or the stipulated ROE that the AG originally proposed and what was agreed to in the settlement.
And I know we can check that as well, but I may just add that to the post-hearing data request just so we can confirm that. But I think that's the only question that we have for this witness.
I don't have questions either. Thank you. Any event, any reason why this witness can be excused? All right, there you go, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next witness.
The company is called Larry Feltner.
Please raise your right hand and be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Please have a seat. Counsel.
Please state your name for the record.
Larry Feltner,
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
to the Prime Group LLC, and I'm the managing partner.
What is your business address?
It's 2604 Sunningdale Place East, LaGrange, Kentucky.
Did you cause to be prepared and filed in this proceeding direct testimony?
I did.
Are you also the sponsor of certain data request responses?
I am.
Do you have any corrections or updates to your testimony or those data responses?
No, I do not.
The witness is available for cross, Your Honor.
No questions, Chair.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Feltner, I'd even written your name down, and I still asked the wrong person. You've heard me ask twice now about the fixed charge versus the MCF charge. Could you tell us a little bit about your perspective and whether Delta considered how that would affect its customers?
Right. That's a multifaceted explanation. And to start with, fairness and equity comes into play because their customer costs are different than demand-related or commodity costs. So if you want a fair and equitable rate, the customer charge needs to reflect as well as you can customer costs. And the current customer charge is well below customer cost. And the commodity charge has to recover those unrecovered customer costs. So if you have a low customer charge and a higher commodity charge, what happens is high-use customers overpay the customer costs, and low-use customers underpay it. So the rate isn't as fair as it could be. And also, when you have to recover unrecovered customer costs in the commodity charge, it compounds the winter bills, because adding that higher commodity charge means as the weather is worse, your bills go up. So ideally, I think you want a cost-based raise. It's more fair and equitable to all your customers.
I was gonna let you have a minute to talk about that, because sometimes when we have the experts in on the cost of service study, they like to give their perspective on the balance there, but I think that sufficiently answers the questions that staff had.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, that answers my
I don't have questions. Read it.
No, you're on.
Any reason this witness couldn't be excused? Sorry, excused. Thank you very much. You have one left?
Yes, we have one left. This is Mr. Paul Mao, and he is the one that is on the screen. So this will be a virtual witness.
Mr. Mal, can you hear me? I can't hear you. I think you might be on mute.
Let me switch the microphone.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, good. I tried a different microphone.
Yeah, would you please raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you, sir, and counsel, you may ask.
Would you please state your full name for the record?
Yes, my name is Paul Moul. That's spelled M-O-U-L, and the way I pronounce it, it rhymes with owl.
All right. By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm the managing consultant of the independent firm P. Mallon Associates.
And if you could please state your business address?
251 Hopkins Road, Haddonfield, New Jersey, 08033.
And did you file direct and rebuttal testimony in this proceeding?
I did.
And did you also sponsor the responses to certain data requests in this case?
I did as well.
Do you have any corrections to your testimony or those responses?
I do have corrections to 2 documents.
And what are those?
If you go to the attachments that went with my direct testimony, specifically attachment PRM 14, page 1 of 3.
Okay.
There's a column there identified as months, and the final 4 entries in that column require correction. The 4th row up from the bottom, it says, there are abbreviations, but it's for January 2024. The correct month is May. The following one is February, and that is corrected to June. The second to the last one, March, M-A-R, should be July. And the last one, April, should be August. And just to be clear, the remaining columns with all the numbers are correct. It's just the labels that are the correction.
Thank you. Are there any other corrections?
Yes, on page 15 of my rebuttal,
Okay.
at line 15, sort of towards the middle of the line there, it says March 14, 2024. The correct year is 2025.
Thank you. Are there any other corrections?
None that I'm aware of at this time.
The witness is available for questions.
Anything from the Attorney General's office?
No questions, sir.
Counsel for staff?
We don't have any questions for this witness.
Commissioner O'Gara? I have a little bit, Mr. Mal, if you can hear me okay.
I can.
You talked about in your testimony, the risk factors that you have to consider for natural gas. Could you tell me, so this is, I can't remember what date your testimony was filed. The application was filed in November. Have those factors changed for you in light of, I don't know, tariffs and unpredictable environmental policies?
The testimony was filed in November of last year. Not really. What I called, there was a chapter in there called natural gas risk factors. Each of those continues to be a concern insofar as measuring the company's business risk.
Nothing, and I've seen spikes in market prices and, but they go back down. Is there anything appreciable for you to be able to feel like we need to change the way we looked at some of those since this was filed?
No. Now, certainly since the time the direct testimony was put together, a whole lot has happened in the market. Interest rates have continued to be much higher than what I had originally thought they might be by this time. And of course, we have all the turmoil in the stock market that has transpired since the beginning of April insofar as tariffs go. And of course, that has affected both the stock and the bond market. But those are market-related factors that are separate from the business fundamentals that I looked at for this company.
Okay. And then I appreciated your description of everything that goes into your rate of return expectations and calculations, but as far as this particular company, there was in the testimony, I believe, from Mr. Brown, an expectation that for this year there would be a rate of return of only 3.06. Do you know whether that is that something you looked at, whether that's a reasonable expectation for this year?
No, that really didn't enter into my analysis as to what an appropriate ROE ought to be for this company. I use proxy companies to come up with my recommendation.
Okay.
And felt that the output from the analytical process used to apply the various market-derived models was reasonable for Delta.
Gotcha. Okay. So little bit more theoretical or based on proxies from the natural gas world. Okay. From actual. All right. I think that's all the questions I have. Any redirect?
No.
From anybody? All right. Mr. Mao, I believe you may be excused, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Got 11 o'clock. Anybody want a break before we do the next two witnesses? Yes? Yes, break? Yep.
Yes.
Let's have a 15-minute break. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
I'll see everyone back in 15 minutes. monitor and I got too far from a mic, so I hope that's better for people who are listening. All right, we are back on the record in case number 2024-00346, the electronic application of Delta Natural Gas Company for an adjustment of gas rates. And I believe applicant was finished calling witnesses?
Yes.
And we're ready for Attorney General's office to call your witnesses.
Thank you, Chair. With the Chair's permission, I'm going to call David Ditimore first. He was handled all of our accounting issues and proposed adjustments. And I've checked with company counsel, and I don't believe they will have objection if I ask him a couple of leading questions, well, not leading, but direct testimony to explain a little more. I thought it would be helpful for the commission, and of course, you can ask him questions about this too. if
Right,
that's-
so instead of just presenting and you'll have some direct questions for him.
Yes, if
And
that's okay.
no objection from, all right, call your
Okay.
witness. I believe
We
he's
call,
online.
we call David Ditimore.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you but not see you. Are you able to turn your camera on?
I attempted to turn it on and I got a note that says my camera is not working. I'm not sure what else.
Well, I would sure prefer to have you on screen for testimony. Have you exhausted your capabilities?
I am still trying, Your Honor.
Okay. I'll give it just a minute then.
I apologize. I'm not sure. I can try and log off and log back on.
I think it would be worth the effort. I would prefer to
Will
have
do.
you online if that's at all possible.
I will log off and log it back on as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
It may be useful for us to just go off the record for a few minutes while we wait for this to happen and come back on. So are back on the record again in case number 2024-00346. And Mr. Ditimore, it looks like it worked. We can see you.
Okay, my apologies for that. I'm
No
sorry.
worries. Yeah, we can hear you as well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay, counsel.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Ditimore, could you give your full name and business address, please?
Yes, my name is David N. Ditimore. My business address is 609 Regent Park Drive, Mount Juliet, Tennessee.
Okay, thank you. And are you the same David Ditimore who caused to be filed direct testimony in this case?
I am.
And did you also provide responses to data requests?
I did.
Do you have any changes to either of those?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, so if you were asked the same questions today, your answers would be the same?
Yes, they would.
Okay, thank you. With Mr. Ditimore, with the chair's permission, I have a couple of questions to ask you before I turn you over for cross.
Okay.
Have you been listening to the discussion today about the request for a regulatory asset?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and at the heart of the regulatory asset is a repair deduction, is that correct?
Yes, it's related to consulting studies that the company engaged with outside experts to evaluate their compliance with rules that the Internal Revenue Service put out in 2024.
Okay, and do you have any opinion as to whether, excuse me, as to whether in this case the proposed repair deduction will inure to the favor of ratepayers?
Yes, the repair deduction is a very favorable item both to ratepayers and the company. So I commend the company for taking the repair deduction, first of all. Secondly, the IRS rules that came out in 2024 were very complex, and it's altogether reasonable and appropriate that the company went outside to hire outside experts to evaluate their compliance with these new rules that clarified what could or could not be taken as a repair deduction. So I support the establishment of a regulatory asset in this regard, and certainly think that repair deduction on behalf of ratepayers should be fully utilized, and as best as I could tell, the company has done that.
Okay, thank you, sir. With that, I can turn the witness over for cross-exam.
Okay. Applicant?
I have one question, Mr. Ditimore. My name is Monica Braun. I represent Delta Natural Gas in this proceeding. And I think you mentioned that you were listening to the hearing earlier this morning. And did you hear the commission staff's question regarding the $8,000 variance in cash working capital from the amount that you proposed in your testimony to the amount that was agreed to in the stipulation?
Yes, I did hear that.
And do you have an understanding of the basis of that $8,000 variance?
Yes, I do. So the value of a cash working capital adjustment is a function of two things. It's the rate-based component, and then it's the application of that against the rate of return that's adopted in a particular case. So the settlement includes the calculation of the cash working capital that was supported by the Attorney General's office. What did change, however, was the settled overall rate of return. So as the rate of return changed, that changes the value of the revenue requirement component of the cash working capital, and that's what that $8,000 represents.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't have any further questions.
Sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think, Mr. Ditimore, did you hear me ask earlier that as a post-hearing data request, we were going to ask for the Excels that supported the numbers in the stipulation unlocked and with their formulas intact? And I don't know to what extent you would have to coordinate with Delta to get that, but if you don't mind, that is gonna be what our post-hearing data requests. So to the extent it would require you, I just wanted to make you aware. And that's all we have. We don't have anything additional.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I do not have anything.
One second. Well, I don't think I have questions either. Thank you very much, Mr. Ditimore, and thank you for making that adjustment on your technology for us this morning. Any reason this witness couldn't be excused?
Thank you, and again, I apologize.
All right, you're
Thank you.
welcome to listen in, but you are excused if you'd like. Okay, and counsel may call your next witness.
The Attorney General calls Richard Baudino.
Mr. Baudino, I can see you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All
Hope you
right.
can hear me.
I can. Please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you, counsel. You may ask.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Baudino, could you give your full name and business address?
Yes, it's Richard A. Baudino, and the business address is J. Kennedy and Associates Incorporated, 570 Colonial Park Drive, Suite 305 in Roswell, Georgia.
Thank you. And are you the same Mr. Baudino who caused to be filed into this docket direct testimony?
Yes,
And did you also respond to certain data requests?
yes, I did.
If you were to be asked those same questions today, would your responses be the same?
They would.
Do you have any kind of corrections to make to your testimony?
I have no corrections that I'm aware of.
Okay. The witness is available for cross.
No questions.
Staff?
No questions.
Okay, Commissioner Reagan? I don't have questions for you either, Mr. Baudino. Any reason this witness couldn't be excused? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. I'm not aware of any exhibits that need to be introduced. Any motions at this time? Staff, can you get requests out by April 22nd?
Yes, sir.
And then would April 29th be adequate time to respond? Our final order is due July 1st. It's like suspension date is September 25th. Staff, we intend to meet the suspension date.
The suspension date's the July date, and
Oh,
then
sorry, July
September
1st.
is the statutory date, and we do intend to meet the suspension date.
Thank you for correcting me. It is July 1st. Okay. What about briefing?
I don't think the AG sees a need for a brief. I mean, it's up to the company if they want to, because they have the burden of proof, so.
Well, let's say simultaneous by May 9th, if you decide after
Sure.
the
Okay.
requests go out and get answered. So simultaneous initial brief, May 9th, reply brief if any, and I know it's a settlement case by May 16th. All right. Anything further? All right,
No,
it's
ma'am.
been a pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Gather
Thank you.
time. We're adjourned.
Thank you.